He helped me post flyers of my baby in his neighborhood, on the corner of his house, the street that he lives. He told me, along with his mother, I would not lie to you.
January 4th, 2022, East Point, Michigan. It was the kind of night most families don't remember. Cold air settled across the neighborhood. The streets were quiet. Inside a modest home on a quiet block, a teenage girl had just finished work. She was tired but excited. Her name was Zion Foster, 17 years old, high school senior. First week at a new job. She'd spent the evening curled up next to her mom in bed, laughing, sharing videos, cracking jokes about how her feet hurt from being on shift too long. It was ordinary and perfect. One of those little moments that sticks with a parent long after it ends. Zion was the oldest of 6, a helper, a leader. Her siblings looked up to her like she was made of gold. She had already been accepted into several colleges. Her grade point average was 3.8. She was planning her prom colors, maybe purple or rose gold. She hadn't made her mind up yet. Graduation was a few months away, and she was ready for the world. Zion sang in her church choir, sketched portraits in her notebooks, and kept scriptures tucked inside her phone case. She believed in faith, family, and the future. Her mother, Sierra Milton, worked long hours as a nurse. She did everything she could to keep her children safe, fed, and loved. She didn't give permission easily. But that night, when Zion asked if she could go see her cousin in Detroit, she agreed. His name was Jalen Brazier, a young man from Zion's father's side of the family. She called him Fable. That's how she saved his number in her phone. Family meant trust. He pulled up to the house around 10:45 p.m., but instead of stopping in the driveway like usual, he parked in front of the neighbor's home. Zion grabbed her phone, her little purse, and headed out the door with no coat. Sierra watched her go. At 12:59 a.m., Zion sent a text, "I'm on my way home." And that was the last message she ever sent. The next few hours were quiet. Too quiet. And by sunrise, nothing about that night would feel ordinary anymore. East Point, Michigan. January 4th, 2022. Zion Foster left her home that night with no sign of hesitation. It was just before 10:45 p.m. She wasn't going far, just to visit a cousin she'd known her whole life, Jalen Omar Brazier. He was older, 23, and lived in Detroit. Zion had him saved in her phone as Fable, short for favorite. That alone told her mother, Sierra Milton, everything she thought she needed to know about the trust between them. Jalen had pulled up outside, but instead of stopping in front of the house like usual, he parked in front of the neighbors. Sierra noticed. She always noticed. But it didn't feel like enough of a reason to say no. Zion wasn't dressed to go far, no coat, just her phone and a purse. There was no argument, no sign of tension. Zion walked out the door, and Sierra let her go. It was a school night, but Zion was a senior with a 3.8 GPA on track to graduate that June. She'd just started a new job at the Detroit Wing Company. Her shift ended earlier that evening, and she'd come home to wind down like she always did, joking with her siblings, chatting with her mom. There was nothing unusual about the night, until it got too quiet. At 12:59 a.m., Sierra received a message. A short text from Zion, "I'm on my way." It was routine, reassuring, enough to let her fall asleep but not deeply. By 3 a.m., Sierra was wide awake again. Something wasn't right. She checked Zion's location. Her daughter had location sharing turned on. The dot wasn't moving. It still sat at Jalen's house in Detroit. Sierra waited. Then she called. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. By 5 a.m., the silence had become something else. Sierra reported Zion missing that morning, January 5th, 2022, first to East Point Police, then to Detroit Police. She provided everything, location data, text messages, the last address Zion had been tracked to. She explained that Zion was responsible, faith-driven, and had never done anything like this. And then, the first lie. Jalen told police he hadn't seen Zion in months, claimed he had no idea what they were talking about, said he didn't know where she was, hadn't been in contact, hadn't spoken to her. Sierra knew that wasn't true. He had called her himself on the morning of January 5th before police had even contacted him. His voice was calm, emotionless. He said, "I don't know why Zion would lie and say she was with me. I haven't seen her in forever." The same day he told that lie to police, Jalen stood beside Sierra in the streets, helping her pass out missing person flyers. He printed them, posted them, reassured her. He looked her in the eyes. He walked her neighborhood, hand in hand with guilt. Sierra later told the court, "He told me, along with his mother, that they would never lie to me. He said, 'I know this has got to be really fearful for you, but I haven't seen her.'" She believed him. At first, she wanted to. Days passed. Zion's siblings asked where their big sister was. Her brother even went with Sierra to Jalen's house. He banged on the door, yelling through the frame, "Is Zion here? I know she's here." But there was no answer. Sierra sat in the car outside that house as the sun came up, looking at the place where her daughter's phone had last pinged. She stared at that front door, willing someone, anyone, to tell the truth. "I fasted. I prayed. I begged God not to let my baby be thrown away like trash," she later told investigators. But even in her fear, even in her hope, she began to feel something deep inside her shift. This wasn't just a miscommunication. This wasn't just a girl out late. Her daughter was gone, and the only person who could tell her why was pretending she'd never been there at all. 2 weeks passed. The search stretched from street corners to online pleas. Still, no Zion. Her mother, Sierra Milton, was running on fumes, working, searching, praying, and holding together a household full of confused, hurting children. Every morning she woke up hoping for a call. Every night she went to sleep feeling the ache of something she couldn't fix. But the answers were never far. In fact, they were sitting quietly with the one person who could have ended it all in a single sentence. Jalen Brazier, Zion's cousin, the last person to see her alive, the one who claimed he hadn't seen her in months. The same cousin who knocked on doors with Sierra, passed out flyers, and walked shoulder to shoulder with a grieving mother. On January 19th, 2022, he turned himself in. And when detectives sat him down, the truth finally started to move. The interrogation video, never before seen by the public until court, captures the moment. A dimly lit room. Jalen in a hoodie, looking down, fidgeting. "Detective, why didn't you call an ambulance for Zion?" "Jalen, I was scared. I thought it would look like I killed her." He told them they were smoking marijuana together. That she suddenly became unresponsive. That she stopped breathing. He said he checked for a pulse and felt nothing. Then he said something that would stop any parent's heart. "I didn't know what to do, so I wrapped her up in a blanket and put her in the trunk." No attempt at CPR, no emergency call, no help. Instead, he drove through the city of Detroit, searching for a place to discard her. Finally, he pulled up behind an apartment complex near Joy Road and Greenfield, where a large dumpster sat next to a row of trash bags. That's where he left her. "I just didn't want anyone to think I killed her," he said. But that wasn't all. Federal agents later uncovered what Jalen did next. On January 6, 2022, at 2:35 p.m., less than 24 hours after dumping Zion's body, Jalen used his phone to Google, "Are trash trucks also compactors?" 1 minute later, another search. What is the force of a garbage truck compactor? Those searches weren't random. They were calculated. They were time-stamped. And they were performed just 25 minutes after he returned from the area where he claimed to have left her. This wasn't panic. This was planning. While Sierra stood outside in the cold handing out flyers, while she watched Zion's younger siblings cry themselves to sleep, while she retraced steps and replayed that night in her head over and over, Jalen knew. He knew she was gone. He knew where she was. He knew she'd never come home. And still, he called. Still, he stood next to her mother. Still, he hugged her. He helped tape Zion's missing photo to poles and storefronts, knowing she was already in the trash. "You could have called 911, Sierra later said. "You could have called me. I would have picked her up myself. I would have come and got her. You didn't even try." Even now, that thought never leaves her. That maybe, if he had just told the truth sooner, she could have had the chance to bury her daughter with dignity. But instead, Jalen chose silence. And for every hour that passed, that silence grew into something darker. It would take over a year and a full-scale investigation across multiple counties before Zion's family would even begin to understand how far that silence went. And by then, it was too late. The decision wasn't made lightly. Months had passed, leads were thin, lies had been unraveled, but there was still no body, no physical proof of what had happened to Zion Foster. Only a confession, only a dumpster, only silence. The area Jalen Brayer described was behind an apartment complex on the west side of Detroit, near Joy Road and Greenfield. He told investigators he placed her there sometime after 1 a.m. on January 5, 2022. But by the time he admitted that to police, it was too late. Trash collection routes had already run their course. Waste management trucks had moved. Loads had been compacted, transported, and buried deep inside one of Michigan's largest active landfills. Pine Tree Acres Landfill, Macomb County, a massive expanse of earth, machinery, and rot covering over 400 acres. It would become the focus of a full-scale operation unlike anything the Detroit Police Department had undertaken in years. On May 31, 2022, the search officially began. 40 officers, dressed in white hazmat suits, a designated 100 by 100-foot excavation zone, surrounded by fencing, police tents, environmental crews, and media trucks. Temperatures in the upper 80s, humidity rising, mountains of decomposing waste stretching for miles. For weeks they sifted through sludge, torn clothing, broken appliances, and decaying food. Every item had to be checked, every inch examined. The stench was overwhelming. The process, grueling. This wasn't just about locating a body. This was about proving she mattered. That a 17-year-old black girl, discarded like trash, was worth every ounce of time, labor, and effort it took to find her. Detectives worked 12-hour shifts. They used bulldozers to peel back compacted layers. They hand-raked the soil. They marked and flagged every item that could be linked to Zion. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And still, no trace of her. No clothing, no hair, no bones. Just absence. The hardest part wasn't the search, it was the waiting. Back in East Point, Sierra tried to keep life together, but every new update came with the same result. We're still looking. She kept Zion's room intact. She still received emails from the school, prom invitations, senior photo packages, graduation reminders. To know that my baby has to be recovered from trash, Sierra later said, her voice cracking, that an attempt even has to be made like this. There is no training for that kind of pain, no script for how to respond to a recovery effort that treats your daughter like debris. But Sierra showed up anyway. She visited the landfill. She stood on the edge of that search zone while officers dug through garbage in 90-degree heat. She watched trucks roll in and out. And she waited. Detroit Police Chief James White told reporters, "You can call it a needle in a haystack, but if that needle is your child, you're gonna dig. And we're going to dig with you." By the end of July, the landfill search came to a close. 5 months, thousands of man-hours, nothing recovered, but something had changed. Despite the absence of a body, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office made a rare decision. They would pursue a no-body homicide case. It was bold. It was high risk, but it was the only path forward. They had Jalen's confession, they had the Google searches, they had evidence of intent, and they had a mother willing to testify about every detail, every text, every lie. A body wasn't necessary to prove Zion was dead. The way she was treated after she stopped breathing said enough. So the case was filed, and preparations for trial began. No child should ever be searched for like this. No mother should ever have to wait for answers in a landfill. But even in the darkest spaces, there were people willing to do the work, because Zion deserved to be found. And whether they held her hand again or not, her name wasn't going to be buried. March 18, 2024. After more than 2 years of waiting, of digging, of living in limbo, the case of Zion Foster was brought before a jury in the 3rd Judicial Circuit Court of Wayne County, Michigan. Inside that courtroom, the seats were filled with reporters, relatives, and supporters who had followed every twist of the investigation. The courtroom was still, but the emotions underneath were anything but. Jalen Omar Brazier, now 25, sat just feet away from the family he betrayed. He wore a pale blue shirt, hands folded in front of him. His expression was blank. No tears, no apology. The prosecution began by laying out the timeline. Zion was last seen alive in his presence on January 4, 2022. He denied seeing her, lied to police, lied to her mother. He said she'd vanished. But his own words would return to convict him. The jury listened to his recorded confession, his own voice admitting he'd placed her body in a dumpster behind an apartment building. They showed his Google history. Searches for, "Are trash trucks also compactors?" and "What is the force of a garbage truck compactor?" Just minutes after he returned from the dump site. They brought in forensic analysts, phone data experts, and landfill supervisors. Piece by piece, the prosecutors reconstructed Zion's final hours and what Jalen did after. The defense tried to paint it as a tragedy, a panic, an accident. But nothing they said could explain why he never picked up the phone, why he let a mother hand out flyers while he watched silently, why he told police straight-faced that he hadn't seen Zion in months. For Zion's family sitting in the front row, every moment in that courtroom carried weight. Her little brother, her younger sisters, her mother, Sierra Milton, sitting just feet from the man who took her daughter. And then came the verdict. On May 16, 2024, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury found Jalen Brazier guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. There was no shouting, no applause, just tears. When sentencing day came on June 3, 2024, the courtroom fell silent as Sierra stood to speak. Her voice steady, but every word wrapped in grief. "You threw her out, and then you helped me post flyers. You stood with me and lied." She talked about the hours she spent praying, the nights she couldn't sleep, the calls to hospitals and morgues. She described watching her other children grow up with a missing piece of themselves. She remembered how Jalen's own mother told her, "My son wouldn't lie." But he did. Sierra looked directly at him as she spoke. "If you had called me that night, I would have come and picked her up. I wouldn't have asked any questions. She trusted you, and you left her in the cold." Judge Donald Knapp delivered the sentence. "Mr. Brazier, this is a tragedy that could have been avoided. Your actions showed a shocking disregard for human life and for the family who trusted you." The court handed down 38 to 90 years for second-degree murder, with an additional 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence, to be served consecutively. He will not be eligible for parole until he serves at least 43 years. The numbers landed like bricks. No celebration. No real sense of closure, because there was no grave to visit. No funeral had ever taken place. Just a courtroom, a sentence, and the empty space where Zion should have been. She should have been walking across the stage in June 2022. She should have worn her prom dress. She should have lived. Justice came, but it came without her. And that truth still lingers. The courtroom is empty now. The judge has spoken. The sentence has been handed down. The cameras are gone. But for the people who loved Zion Foster, the real story doesn't end here. Her mother still gets up every morning to care for the children left behind. Still cooks dinner at the same stove. Still checks the phone out of habit. Still finds herself staring out the front window, the same one she looked through that night when Zion walked out the door without a jacket. Her siblings, there are 5 of them, are learning how to carry a kind of pain that doesn't always show. The youngest sometimes asks questions Sierra doesn't know how to answer. Zion was the one who helped with homework, who braided hair, who played music in the living room loud enough for the neighbors to hear. There is a silence in the house now. It's not just absence, it's the weight of knowing what could have been. Sierra still receives graduation emails from the school system, automated reminders for senior portraits, college flyers addressed to Zion. They come like clockwork, unaware that the person they were meant for never got the chance. And even though Jalen was sentenced, the truth still stings. Why was he believed for so long? Why did it take weeks for anyone to consider the possibility that Zion wasn't just gone, but harmed? Why did the full-scale search not begin until months had passed, after valuable time had been lost. How many other black girls go missing in this country and don't get a landfill search, don't get press conferences, don't get the attention they deserve until it's too late? Zion's case is rare, but it shouldn't be. She didn't have to be famous to matter. She didn't need a headline to be worth finding. She was already somebody. She had already made an impact. Her journals are still tucked in drawers. Her drawings still hang on bedroom walls. Her songs, the ones she wrote but never recorded, are still folded up in notebooks, lyrics filled with hope and rhythm and dreams that stretched far beyond the city limits of East Point. She had plans. She was preparing for prom. She wanted to study music. She had already been accepted to college. She was going to make it out, and then she was thrown away like nothing. But Zion was not nothing. She was love. She was talent. She was laughter and faith and light. And even in death, her name still holds power. So say it, out loud, share it, remember it, teach it to your daughters. Demand justice in her name. Because Zion Foster should still be here. She should be walking across a stage. She should be taking photos in a cap and gown. She should be singing somewhere right now. But instead, she became a case file. And a mother became a soldier. If you're watching this and you feel something, don't let it stop at feeling. Let it move you. Support the families of missing black girls. Share their stories before it's too late. If you see a system dragging its feet, call it out. If you notice a name no one is saying, speak it. Because justice is not just about what happens in a courtroom. It's about who we choose to care about. And Zion deserved to be cared for. Zion deserved to be found. Zion deserved to grow up. Say her name. Zion Foster. If this story meant something to you, don't let it end here. Like this video so more people see Zion's name in their feed. Comment below. Let her family know she's not forgotten. Let the world know you're paying attention. Share this video with someone, anyone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel for more real stories that matter. Because every share, every comment, every click, it pushes her story forward. Let's make sure Zion Foster's voice keeps echoing long after the video ends.